Hello, everyone. It's Sunday once again, and it's now 2 o'clock here in the UK, and Stockport is boiling. It's just really, really hot. I mean, I think this weather we're having at the moment, we're actually, it's hotter than when I was in Manila because, I mean, my palms are just sweating. It's really annoying. It's one of the things that, one of the reasons why I left Manila is because my hands are always sweating there. It's always just not good. But anyways, this hot weather don't last anyway, so we'll just enjoy it while it's still hot. Very unusual. But anyways, yeah. Welcome to another episode of Ask the Drummer. And today I'm really excited about our guest because for the first time ever, I mean, we're having someone who's not just a drummer, but it's like a real life airline pilot. It just, I can't believe it when I found out that it's actually, like a real, like a senior pilot. And my tech support, my husband, he's really excited about it as well. And I think he's got some questions for our guest, not drumming questions, but sort of like airline questions. So hopefully we'll talk to him about it later on. But yeah, my dear friends, please welcome Captain Mike Simkins. Yay!
Hello.
Hello, Captain Mike.
Welcome aboard this podcast. Just right.
How are you? Are you
Hot.
okay? Hot, yeah. You're in Shropshire, so
I am, and I was debating whether or not to wear my Speedos or just, but I decided no.
yeah. But it's unusual though. We don't always get this kind of weather, so
Well, what isn't unusual is everybody's now complaining about it being warm. When it rains, everybody complains about it raining, and when it's cold, everybody complains about it being cold. So, well,
it's one of the first things I've learned when I moved to Manchester. That British people just complain about the weather, no matter what, no matter what the weather is. They just
if there's
complain.
nothing to complain about, they will find something to complain about. Which what Twitter's based on. Twitter was based on the way Manchester people think. I can say that because I'm from Manchester.
Well, talking about Manchester, yesterday I actually celebrated 26 years of living in Manchester, which for me is still the best city in the world. And you were born and bred in Manchester as well, weren't you?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
So I celebrated 26 years, but also there's some sad news because Paul Ryder, Happy Mondays, just left the planet. That was like 2 days ago. And I just want to say my sincere condolences to Sean Ryder and Happy Mondays family.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You never had sort of like did you know him personally?
No, never met him. I mean, I knew various members of the band, but never met Paul. But as we were chatting before, the Manchester music scene is very intertwined, and so various people I'd played in bands with were actually involved with Happy Mondays. One of the chaps, he actually did a lot of the programming, wrote the computer of the synths and sequences, so he used to do the programming for them. So yeah, but sad news.
Yeah, that's just really sad because apart from the Stone Roses and the Smiths, one of the other bands from Manchester that I really got fascinated, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come here is Happy Mondays. So that's really sad and shocking as well when I heard that news. But anyway, so Captain Mike, you're also known as Mike Simmy. Is that your like?
I was just known as Simmy at school. So yeah, so it just kind of that's how it came about. So yeah. So it keeps the two lives separate. That's what it is.
But is that so like your career, like your rock and roll name, Mike Simmy?
Yeah, well, yeah, it just kind of evolved. So yeah. So it's Captain Simkins, Mike Simmy. you know, drumming stuff. Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So last time I saw you was at the Cavern in Liverpool, and you were in the Membranes and supporting the Chameleons. That was an amazing. That was awesome. That gig.
It was a good night, wasn't it?
It was really, really good. So, but it wasn't the first time, because I thought that was the first time that I've actually seen you play. But I remember now that that wasn't the first time, because I saw you in Manchester in 2016 as well.
Right.
At Gulliver's, but you were in a band called Soup.
I was.
Yeah, and Andy Whitaker from The Sun and the Moon.
Or PC Mike Swirling, as he's also known as.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Is it Emmerdale?
Emmerdale, yeah.
Emmerdale, yeah, because I don't know, I don't really watch.
And he's got the same accent on that as I've known him since school.
Oh.
No, he's a good lad, really good lad. In fact, he was up here a few weeks ago because he has he does a little band. It's Tim and his friend. In fact, both the guys I used to go to school with, Andy, who was also in the Chameleons, and they were in a band.
Andy Clegg.
Yeah.
Andy Clegg was the other one. Yeah.
And that was music for Aborigines.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we're good friends. We go back way. Yeah. So
I mean, believe it or not, I mean the Filipino, what we call Filipino new wavers, they actually know of these bands, Sun and the Moon and Music for Aborigines, and their records are one of those sort of like sought after records by Filipino record collectors.
It's a very, very weird industry, music. BFG, which was my band at the time, we've reformed. We were virtually unknown in Manchester, yet we were doing really well in Germany, Belgium, and now I believe we're getting quite some plays out actually in the Philippines. So, but it's all nowadays. It's pretty much Spotify driven.
Yeah. That's right.
So yeah, it's really interesting. You have no idea who's going to discover you and when. So, for example, well, I'll leave that till later.
Yeah, I'll leave that for later. Yeah, because especially now that we've got the internet and things, so it's quite easy. But yeah we'll leave that till later. But we'll start with the actual introduction. So welcome to Ask the Drummer. Episode 46 is all about you, Captain Mike Simkins. And I've got to say Captain Mike Simkins, but because you really are, you're a captain.
But did you used to be a cabin crew?
Pardon?
Did you used to be cabin crew?
Me?
Yeah.
No. Oh no. No.
Oh, you were ex-cabin crew.
No. I wish, because it's like one of those. It's a glamorous, very glamorous.
Oh, if you only knew! If you only knew!
Because I think when you're young, and especially like in the Philippines, because at the time when I was a kid, not many people are actually flying is for the rich people, and people also like the stewardesses and the stewards, and especially the pilot and all these involved in the airline industry. We all think of them as like they look so glamorous, and they look so, it's like all of them seem to be beautiful people. So,
that's how I got in.
That's right. But so before we talk about your career in the airline industry, we're going to start from the very beginning. So you're born and bred in Manchester.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you? So like growing up, and which part of Manchester are you? So like
Wet.
were you from? Sorry.
Wet.
But I always have that conversation sort of like with my husband, because my husband's born in Stockport, and then we always seem to have this sort of like, we get people saying that it's always wet or it's always raining in Manchester, but that's not true though, is it?
This is green screen, this sun. Yeah, no, it was all right. It was just nothing happening, and in fact, I decided as a youngster what I wanted to do: either be in a band, be a pilot, become a Formula One racing driver. Now, unfortunately, Lewis Hamilton beat me to that. But no, there was no way you could do anything like that from where I was from. And Manchester at the time, it was just post Joy Division, really, and that's when I started. When I picked up the drumsticks, thought, hey, drums look easy. But I ended up, there was nothing really happening in Manchester, so I ended up joining a band from Liverpool. So I spent a couple of years with the band, driving between Manchester back and forward. Great bunch of guys and a girl, but never really got anywhere. However, I did get first ever play on the radio with that band. So it's John Peel, I think, played it. Janice Long, who again sadly died. Late last year, wasn't it? Might be earlier.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was nothing happening, and then I saw an advert in the Hacienda, because we used to go down there quite a lot, and it was a Factory Records band looking for a drummer. So I thought, oh, why not? It's going to save some petrol. And and that's, I joined. The band was called the Volta Lakota.
That's a brilliant name.
Yeah.
Who came up with that, La Volta Lakota?
I think it was Dave, the singer. I'm not too sure, but he was heavily into this Native American philosophy and what have you. So it was, but it was great fun. And at the time, Pete Hook, he would actually mix for us when we played live, and we did quite a few tours with New Order. And again, just great bunch of guys. Had a great time. Looked after really well, because in those days, a support band, they usually be treated not particularly well. But no, they went, like Rob Gretton, the manager, went out of their way to make us feel welcome, and just had a great time, great memories.
Yeah, that was in 1982, and according to Wikipedia, that was formed in Hume in Manchester. And then I saw some of the band members, because Jed Duffy at Stockholm Monsters, again, that's another band that quite a few Filipino new wavers, they, especially the record collectors, that's one of those records that they wanted to have by Stockholm Monsters. And and you talk about Dave. Dave Hicks. Yeah, Dave Hicks sort of like formed Revenge with Peter Hook.
That's it. Yeah. Well, it just shows you how kind of incestuous the whole thing is. Hooky formed the band with Dave Hicks, and the guy who engineered BFG's first record, a chap called CJ, was also in the band. And here's an interesting fact. Have you seen the front cover of Revenge's, I think it's called Pineapple Face?
Yeah.
And it's got the girl on the front.
Yeah.
It was seen, a doctor saw that picture and got in contact and said her throat, it didn't look right, and it turned out to be nasty. But they basically,
Oh, so, well.
Yeah. So.
God, that's incredible.
Yeah. Could potentially save her life.
Yeah. Oh wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So oh wow. So after La Volta Lakota, you left and formed BFG, because BFG really is your band.
Yeah.
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 And
If our first proper gig was actually supporting. This is where it gets very strange. Our first proper gig was supporting New Order, but the singer couldn't do it, so we ended up asking Andy Whitaker to sing. So he came along. He only had time to remember the choruses, and he literally made up the words during the concert in front of several thousand people, which I just thought was not only brilliant but funny as well. And so yeah, we had that was the start of BFG, and then we released a record, and we were just blown away. It sold out within a week or a couple of weeks, I think it was.
where did the name come from, though? It's not Big Friendly Giant, is it?
You're only £10 now. Yeah, no, no, it doesn't. There's only two of us who absolutely know what it means, and others think they know what it means. And of course, when they say it, we just nod their head, yes, that's what it means. But there's only two of us that actually know what it means. We've even put out a tape when we first started with a name that it could be, but it's not. So yeah, there's only, as I say, two of us who know.
Oh,
But we had a great time. We played a lot in Europe. Managed to get a big deal, and then the two original members grew up and decided that this rock and roll life, it was a little bit too scary for long term. So they kept with the jobs, which was probably the right decision. And then I started working with another two guys, Steve and Paul. And actually, myself and Steve got back in contact a few months ago because, again, out of the blue, I had a message, or I was contacted by an American production company who wanted to use one of our tracks in a film. And they have. So yeah, it's Hollywood. What was it? Rom-com, and the tracks on it. So I got in contact with the singer Steve, and we started writing again with each other. So yeah, it's
Well, I was reading up on the history of BFG, and I found out that Peter Hook actually lent the band the original drum machine. I think it's called Oberheim DBX.
Oh, yeah.
So drum machine, which is responsible apparently for the Blue Monday. So is that true? Can you tell us more?
Well, we'll say he lent it to us. I can't remember if we nicked it, but I think we we ended up with it for a couple of months. Yeah, it was. I think it was via the old La Volta drum. I can't remember now, but yes, basically we ended up with the original Blue Monday drum machine, which I couldn't work out for love nor money. Whereas the guy I set the BFG up with, Keith, he was a bit of a tech wizard. 5 minutes later, we had it working. So, but yeah, that was, and then logically we thought, we could start a band. So I was the only one who could play any instrument, i.e. the drums. So what we did, we bought a drum machine. I picked up the guitar, which I couldn't play, and he picked up the bass that he couldn't play. We made a record, and it sold out, and Hooky loved it, and lots of other people loved it, and that was it. We kind of fell into it.
Yeah, it's amazing that you're actually heavily connected to Peter Hook.
Yeah, he owes me money. Actually, that is almost a true story, because the very first time I met Hooky, I just joined La Volta, and we went to see this band in the place called the Gallery, and I'd arranged to meet Dave, the singer from La Volta, at the Gallery, and this American band, I don't know what happened to them. I think it was about 12 people there. A band called REM.
Oh my god!
Yeah, well, they were playing, and Dave, the singer, came up with Hooky in tow, and so Dave says to me, "Oh, it's a bit embarrassing." And this is the time Blue Monday was in the charts. I mean, you know, New Order were huge, and he said Hooky's put his card in the machine, cash machine, and it's declined it. He says, "Can you lend him a tenner?" I thought, tenner? No chance. I'll give him a fiver. But so I lent Hooky the fiver, and didn't think I'd see it again. And a couple of nights later, what we call Kirk Brandon, Spear of Destiny, Hacienda, and I was with a lady friend at the time, and she nudged me. She said, "Hey, there's Pete Hook." I said, "Oh, yeah, there he is," and he's waving. And he walks over. Look, there's the fiver, and he got us a pint. So that shows you, Hook is a good lad.
It's so good. Let me just say hello to Aiden. Aiden is my tech support, my husband. He said that sound and vision okay, which is good. Whenever he says that's okay, then that's fine.
Okay.
And also Rob Jones. Rob Jones is a drummer from the High Five in a Liverpool band.
Okay.
Yeah, but the High Five, and he was also in Wahid with Pete Wiley.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah. So hello, Rob. Yeah.
Was it Wahid or was it Wah? Or was it?
I think it's Wah.
Many names, didn't he?
Yeah, there are so many, like of those Wahs or like Mighty Wah and stuff.
It's a bit like his energy. He changed his name every
week. Yeah. So I also found out that the Stone Roses supported BFG.
Yeah, we played at again the Gallery, and it was La Volta and BFG were playing, and then this ragtag lads came in. Can we play? Can we play? Yeah, okay. And they came on, and I made the mistake of allowing Remy to use my kit. Yeah, so I've still got it, and it's still damaged. But no, it was good. It was a good night. It was just a shame we didn't take pictures.
So, are you still friends with Rennie?
After what he did to my drum kit? No, but the bizarre thing was, what's it called? Manny.
Manny, yeah, the bass player. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Jed before. Well, Jed had written a book, and I'd given him a copy of my book, which you can get at Amazon, folks. But I'd given him a copy of my book, so he invited me down to his book launch in Manchester.
Yeah.
And as I'm walking out, I just heard somebody shout my name, and it was Manny. And he'd got to know me via the book, via Jed. So we had a good long conversation, and so I'd never met the guy before, but what a top bloke. Just really, really friendly bloke.
Oh my God, yeah. I've met Manny before. He's so amazing, very humble, very kind person. Yeah.
Didn't buy me a pint though.
But did you tell him that you support the Stone Roses supported you?
Actually, what I did say is, I think I mentioned BFG reformed, and we've now got a guy drumming. I play guitar when we play live.
Yeah.
But our drummer's made the big mistake that he's actually better than I am. So I actually asked Manny to sign the book for our drummer, who's a young lad, he's about 22, 23, and I said, "Can you sign it?" Not for me. I said I didn't like the Stone Roses, but if you can sign it for the other man. So he signed it to the second best drummer in BFG from the 93rd best bass player in Manchester. So yeah, we kind of hit it off. Yeah. So
well, this BFG disbanded in 1991. Again, that's according to Wikipedia, because I've been so reading up about BFG.
You've been busy, haven't you?
Well, I've told you before we came on live that this is really a surprise, because I've not heard of BFG before, and I think I know, and I've always loved Manchester bands and everything, and
obviously
I looked up. Well, I've looked it up on YouTube, and that Paris, it's called, and Amelia, Paris, and they're just amazing. It was like I couldn't believe that we didn't get this in the Philippines, because that was in 1985, and I think 1985 or early 80s and mid 80s. That was the time that we're really into British, especially Manchester and Liverpool, so bands. But we never seemed to we didn't get that BFG record or BFG song.
Not a lot of people did. That's why I became a pilot.
So when the pardon?
Am I putting you off?
No. So BFG disbanded. Did you join another band, or is that the time when?
No, literally what happened was we had come back from a big European tour, and I was having to make a decision, big life decision, and I decided that I was do one last album. So I actually got the original original singer who sang Paris and Amelia to do one album, which is Blue. And we went to a studio in Leeds, a place called Lion Studios, where there was two amazing guys who owned the place, engineers. And one of the guys was called Guy Hatton. And this was the early days of Cubase and computer recording and samples and what have you. And he was a whiz kid with it. And I wanted certain sounds that I couldn't get myself, so I had to kind of translate what I wanted to him. Anyway, there was one particular guy hanging around there. He had multicolored hair, and he was very interesting. Again, really nice chap called Jed. And anyway, we ended up finishing the album, and then we put it out, and I went to learn to fly out in the States. By the time I came back, Stone Roses had just gone stratospheric.
Yeah.
And there was a band called Utah Saints, and the Utah Saints was Jed, who I'd met, another chap, I can't remember his name, and Guy Hatton. And Guy had used quite a lot of the techniques that he'd been using on Blue. So was it Something Good's Gonna Happen, Utah Saints, and we did one with Eurythmics where he cut all the Annie Lennox vocals up. And they just went huge. They ended up touring with U2 and the whole lot. But I just had enough with the music business at that point, and just went full time into flying.
Well, before I ask you about the flying career, I wanted to ask you all about the other bands that you were in. album that you were talking about, Blue, that was the one I think that it was difficult for BFG to sort of like play live.
Yes, it was, because it was all, yeah, exactly that. It was all, well, I say it was all. In fact, quite amusing, my son, a few years ago, who's really into his music. In fact, he's now the bass player for BFG. And he was listening to Nine Inch Nails. And he said, oh, I know who you ripped off with BFG, Nine Inch Nails. So I said, when was the album? Nine Inch Nails album? He said, we were before. So it was, but in those days, it was almost impossible to do it live. So it was, yeah, we just couldn't do it. And so I didn't think I'd ever play again, really. And then I was contacted by Andy. I'd done a few other things, but then I was contacted by Andy, asked if I'd like to drum with Sue. So we did a couple of gigs. And again, that's where I met Elliot.
Yeah, Elliot Wheeler, yeah.
He was just like the nicest man you could ever meet.
I know, he really is, yeah. He's very nice.
So, yeah, we did a few gigs. And then kind of that was it. And then the kind of life, kind of two ends of my life kind of intertwined.
Yeah.
I was doing a job. We were flying to Goa. That was one of the destinations we used to fly to. And it was over Christmas, so I'd taken my wife on the trip. And at some point during the flight, I said to my first officer, so I'm going to go back and just make sure my wife's okay. And as I walked back, I heard somebody go, Mike. Look round, and it was John Robb. Now, I'd known John I'd known him in the early 80s. In fact, we used to live near each other in Didsbury. And every Sunday, we'd go and play football. And the deal was nobody had any money in those days. So what would happen is if you played a different town, there'd be a crash pad somewhere. And there'd be a crash pad somewhere, and the Manchester crash pad was John's. And so there'd have various bands would be playing. They'd come and play football. So, but I mean, Dinosaur Jr.'s video for the biggest hit they had, Freak Scene, that was done in John's back garden.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then there was another band touring. There was a double headliner, a band called Tad, and another band, I don't know if you know, Nirvana. And they were touring. And Tad won the right to stay at John's place, and Nirvana stayed somewhere else. But again, they disappeared without anybody hearing about them, didn't they? So, yeah, but as I said, I've known John very well since the early 80s, but we'd lost contact when I went out to fly, you see. And he had no idea that I was the pilot. In fact, I think he thought that it was a fancy dress and it was a stag do or something. So anyway, we swapped email addresses. And then about, it was 2019, he said the Membranes had a tour with a chap called Mark Lanigan. And there was a huge European tour. He said, would you be interested? I said, well, I've not really done properly for 30 odd years. But, well, let's see how it goes. Anyway, we did the tour. Wow, absolutely fantastic. It was all over Europe. And it then turns out, I got to know Mark Lanigan pretty well, actually. In fact, he's written the foreword for my book. And it turns out he'd heard of BFG in the 80s. So, you know, because he used to share the house with Kurt Cobain. And so and he'd heard of the band, as I say, in the 80s. How, you know, people from the next town had not heard of BFG. You know? Yet there it was out in the States. So, yeah, you just never know with music.
Yeah.
It's like having a child. You make a record, it's like having a child. You go, right, out into the world. You've got no idea where it's going to end up. But it takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, that's true. It's like some of the bands that we know in the Philippines. And then when I moved there, and then I talked to like some British people, and they've not heard of it. It's like, how come you've not heard of this band? It's like with Ricky Gervais, you know, like Shauna Dancing. He was in this group called Shauna Dancing.
That's right.
In the Philippines, that's, you know, they're massive. It's like
really?
It's like really, really big. But then when I came here, and then I saw, like, of course, Ricky Gervais famous as a comedian. But then when I saw, like, talk to my friends and the British friends, I said, but you know him as this singer of Shauna Dancing. It was like, what? So I was like, but anyways, yeah, it's like that. I mean, the bands, lots of British bands in the Philippines. Oh no, lots of British bands are very popular in the Philippines. But then you find out that, you know, here in Britain, they're actually not that popular or not well known. So it's really weird.
Well, it is. I mean, we played a concert. The Membranes played a concert. Was it last month or the month before? One of my friends, in fact, again through the music, is he's actually a Superior Court judge, and he'd come over from Canada, and the band we were playing with, was it Wolfhounds? Was it Wolfhounds?
The Wolfhounds.
Wolfhounds.
Yeah.
Turns out they're also one of this judge's favourite bands, and it was quite interesting to see his response to these, because he's got an encyclopedic knowledge of post-punk music. He's absolutely, I mean, his friends, in fact, he was on stage with Pete Hook and the Light when they played in Canada. And there is video circulating of this judge doing the John Barnes rap, which is well worth tracking.
Oh my God.
Along with the worst dab dancing you've ever seen in your life.
Oh my God.
But again, it just shows how powerful music is that you've got a judge and you've got likes of, you know, anybody else, and everybody's got this shared love.
That's true. Yeah.
Everybody down to the same, you know, way of thinking almost. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh my God, that is true. Well, there's another band that I found out that you were in, McKinney.
Yeah.
That's another one that I'm sorry to say that I've not heard of, but it's in 2004. It says when you.
That's right. Yeah, we at the time I was working full time, so it was myself and now wife used to write the material. In fact, we did all the recording at home. And then for live, we actually had some other guys we didn't know. You know, we just put adverts out and got these chaps in. Again, really nice guys. And one of the guys, in particular, Zero, as he's known, he's now BFG guitarist. And that's where we got to know Z. And without doubt, Z is just the best guitarist I've ever seen, ever. It's just phenomenal. So yeah, that's why I got him into BFG, so I could hide behind him and Elliot while I study what the hell's this. So yeah.
Well, what made you change though? Why change from being a drummer to a guitarist that you reformed?
Have you ever tried to write a song on the drums?
well, Phil Collins, so like Phil Collins.
Those aren't songs. Yeah, no, it was just. Oh well, how can I put it? No, it was just that I wanted to write tracks.
Yeah.
And the reason I played drums is I couldn't be bothered with all this faffing about learning instruments. You know, on the drums, you just hit them. Then realise, no, there's a bit more to it than that. But guitar, I mean, if you asked me to play a C chord, I wouldn't have a clue, but I can do that and this. And that's how I've made the tunes. And if it sounds good, it's, well, to my ears, then that's it.
That's okay.
And that's actually quite interesting, because I'll show somebody like Zero, who's technically fantastic, and he struggles, and Elliot, he'll struggle because it's not the normal way of playing a guitar. So, and in fact, one of the highlights of the tour with the Membranes is we had probably the big influences the way I play guitar was the B-52s, Gang of Four, and Keith Levine from Public Image. And when we played at the Roundhouse with Lanigan, Keith Levine came up on stage, and it was like a pinch me now moment where I'm playing the drums with one of my all-time guitar heroes, if you like, doing it stuff. It's great.
Well, which do you enjoy the most? Because I've seen you play drums, and you were so amazing. You know, so like really powerful. And so, do you enjoy, or do you just enjoy both, playing the guitar and playing drums?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because drumming, well, it's a bit like riding a bike. You scrape your knees a lot. No, it's a bit like riding a bike, because I don't have to think too much about drumming. Whereas guitar, it's hard work, because I'm not a guitarist really. And when you're recording, if you make a mistake, you go, "Oh, I'll redo that bit." Of course, live you can't.
Yeah.
From a satisfaction point of view, it's definitely drumming. But obviously, and I've got a distinctive way of playing the guitar. It's a bit like Les Dawson on the piano, but no, it's but it's just totally different. Totally different.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, we're going to talk about your career. I think this is what my husband is actually waiting for. Your career as a pilot. So when did you actually get when did you become officially a pilot? Were you still sort of like doing like drumming and then?
No. Actually, what I did was, when we were recording Blue, the BF in Leeds, I would literally get the train. I'd have the manual out for my exams. Get to Leeds, record during the day, catch the train back, get the manual out again, and literally the day we finished the album, I then caught a flight out to San Jose and just winged it. There was a flying school there, so I was out there for 2 months, was it? Might be 3. Did the basic stuff. So the way you go, it's like steps. So you become a private pilot, and then you build your hours up, and then you do all the exams for commercial pilot. Yeah. And then I became an instructor. So I was instructing people to get the private pilot's license. But then I ended up going out to Malaysia for a year, training Malaysian airline pilots. Wow. Which was interesting.
Yeah.
Then came back and eventually got into an airline. And that was flying aircraft between Aberdeen and Sunborough. And wow, that was a learning experience. It can get so windy up in Sunborough. There's literally no trees. You just get blown over to Norway. It's an awful place in winter. And of course, I'm flying in there as a brand new airline pilot, as a first officer, and you get to know what to do pretty quickly in that. And it was a great learning experience.
Yeah.
And then went on to more advanced turboprop, which is propeller ones, and then joined a company which was called Air Tours about 98. Again, as a first officer, so did 18 months, and then got my command. So I've flown Airbus, Boeings. The job itself is fantastic. However, as you've heard of Sully, the guy who landed in the Hudson, remember him? He landed the engines failed on his Airbus, and he ended up landing into the Hudson River. 10 odd years ago.
Yeah.
And he's become, yes, if you Google him, he's all over. He's like the hero of the Hudson, I think they call him. In fact, there was a film about it with, I can't remember the actor's name. Big actor, Tom Hanks, that's it. And he played, and he's actually said he loved the industry, he loved the job, hated what the industry's become, and he's absolutely right, and that's why I don't fly anymore. Had a big court case with the airline over an issue.
Yeah, and you have written a book about that. It's actually a trilogy. It's called Pulling Wings from Butterflies.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read this one because this is what it says, that it's a true story of when one captain refuses to jeopardize his passenger's safety and stands alone against the entire aviation establishment. So it sounds like really like highly explosive stuff. It's like
very explosive stuff. Book 1 was where the fuse was lit. Book 2 is where, in fact, there's actually several legal cases spinning off from it, which are still yet to be dealt with. And unfortunately, the way the industry is, and in fact, you see a lot of it, similar thing with the, sorry to get heavy for a few minutes, but it's the same thing in the medical industry. About a month or so ago, I was invited down to the House of Lords for a whistleblowing, first reading of the whistleblowing bill. And whilst I was there, I met several doctors, and some of the stories they were telling me was horrendous, where they'd raised safety issues with the NHS, and you would have expected the NHS to say, thank you very much, great, we'll sort it out. And instead, the NHS would do their utmost to try and destroy the credibility of the doctors. In fact, there's a case going through at the moment, Dr. Day, he's called. It now appears, or at least according to the transcripts, that the NHS has been destroying emails, and it's a similar kind of situation in the aviation industry. And the really worrying thing is the medical industry look towards the aviation industry as this big beacon of safety and how things should be done.
Yeah.
Scratch the surface. If everything goes as it should, you're probably going to hear about a lot more about the case over the next few months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, Aidan's got some messages here. He said that it's his dream job being a pilot, but he said that he thinks it's too late for him to train now because he's 64.
64?
64, yeah. So it's too late.
He'd have to finish at 65 anyway. He's what's happening now is, okay, I'll ask you a few questions, all right? So I know it's called Ask the Drummer, but I'm going to ask the podcaster. Okay. How much do you think it would cost to train to be an airline pilot today, in round figures?
Oh my God, it's one of those jobs that, again, I think it's really for rich people, isn't it? It probably costs a lot of money.
Well, you've obviously not read the book.
No, not yet.
I was anything but rich. I'm not. Have you got a small violin there you want to get out and start playing? As I tell you, what had happened was I'd formed the label, and we had a distribution company called Rough Trade, and Rough Trade went bust, owing me a lot of money, and so I literally had nothing, and I was on the bus thinking, what am I going to do here? And I got off the bus. I'd gone to the library in Manchester to keep warm. And, I was on the bus back to Didsbury, and there was an advert in a bank, and it said career development loan. And it was raining. I thought, oh, do I stay on the bus or I'll get off? And I walked in, and that was the start. So I got this career development loan, and then you know, bank, credit card bills, the whole thing. So I was in a huge amount of debt for a long time. But it was what you do. You know, you stay in stasis, or you actually try and do something. So I ended up, as I say, got a loan, and of course, when you're going through the training, you'll meet people who are rich or who have got a lot of experience. So I'd be doing training with squadron leaders and ex-Red Arrows, you know, really highly trained RAF pilots. Of course, they'd ask me, what did you do? And I'd say, oh, I drummed. And it was thinking, wow, this is going to be difficult. But like anything, if you want it badly enough,
yeah.
And it's the really sad aspect of the case, because on every single time, I always refused to put commercial pressure ahead of safety, and up to certain individuals, which when you read the book you'll find out, that's exactly how the industry had been. Had a fantastic time. Management, obviously now and again you're going to get various disagreements, but on the whole, absolutely fantastic, supportive of flight safety. And then certain individuals got into power, and it was also it's just a general descent from how it used to be to how it is now, where you've just got to Google. There was a pilot sacked for falling asleep quite recently, Italian airline. I wouldn't have fallen asleep if the duties weren't so long. There was a company called Wizz Air. They got into a lot of trouble, what the CEO said. It's people think it's the music business is a dodgy business full of sharks. Nothing compared with the aviation industry.
And you know, because you're involved in both of them, so like the aviation and the music.
Well, literally every week I will get emails and phone calls and messages from other pilots and cabin crew who say they've got an issue and they feel that nobody's listening. And I mean, quite bizarre. Where this has ended up is just beyond anything I could have expected. I was contacted by a lady pilot from Delta. She had an issue, and her union wasn't supporting her, and the union hadn't supported me. So, you know, I ended up having to represent myself at trial. So it's and he had a similar experience. But her case involved Donald Trump, it's as I say, it's just exploded out of all. But it just shows how bad the industry is. Having said that, there are some companies are very good and are doing it as they should. So, you know,
Yeah.
but it's generally a race to the bottom.
Well, Aidan replied to your question about how much, and he said £200,000.
Not quite, not far off. About 100 to 150. And how much do you think you would start on? As
probably a lot more than that, because being a pilot, I mean, that's like one of the high-paying jobs, isn't it?
Okay. I'm going to ask you, if you're brand new with your brand new pilot's license, how much do you think you would earn roughly per year? Roughly, have a guess.
$500,000 a year.
About 20,000.
Joke.
Nope.
Seriously?
The reality of it. And that's the reality of the aviation business. Because imagine you've spent that money and then you get your first step and you become a pilot on a turboprop, for example. In fact, my first salary when I became a commercial pilot was £19,000 a year. So it's may have gone up a little bit since, but not a great deal. But what happens is you get your foot on the rung, and of course you want to go up. But that means that if an airline, if you're with one of the cowboy operators and they say you've got to go flying, and you say, well, I'm tired, well, we'll get somebody else. You're out of a job. So it's very difficult to stand up and say for safety and go no.
Yeah.
Now that's one end. When you get to where I had ended up, I was a senior captain, and there's a thing called seniority in the aviation business. And unlike most other jobs, I couldn't just, because I was a captain at one place, I couldn't then join, for example, Virgin or British Airways as a captain. I'd have to start right at the bottom as the first officer again, which is, you know, God knows how much. Well, it's about a third of what you would be earning as a captain, less job security. So it's even less likely to cause waves as you become more senior. And I think that's why my case hit the headline. Well, it did hit the headlines when it happened. It's because it is very, very unusual for a pilot to go against his company. But you know, sometimes in life you've just got to do what you think's right. That's what I did.
Oh wow! I just didn't know that. I thought, like I said, you know, I always see people working in the airline industry, or so like especially the pilots and the flight steward and all that. I always see them as so glamorous and must be, you know, like one of those, like I said, it's like high paying jobs, you know. So, like,
I've been through a few years ago, don't know what it's like now, 15,000.
Oh God.
Yeah. No, it's a bit, in fact, it's very, very similar to the music business in that way. It's a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. So, for example, Stone Roses.
Yeah.
When they were playing Spike Island and what have you, they were making no money. Everybody thought, oh, they'd be multimillionaires. They were making no money. I know one of your favourite bands is S Club 7. Well, they were a put-together band. They were on about £15,000 or £16,000 a year. But everybody thinks, oh, well, you know, they're on the TV. And in fact, myself, I don't know if you've remember a chap called Andrew Gold.
Yeah.
Never Let Us Slip Away.
Yeah. But
the Eagles were his support band at one point. So, and there was a chap called Graham Goldman who was Tennessee.
Yeah.
They had a band called
Then they Wax.
Yeah. Well, I was the drummer. Yeah.
Really?
If you have a look at the Montreux Rock Festival, be sat down because you'll see me with hair. Yeah. And again, fantastic guys. And Andy Clegg was the keyboard player. So we did quite a few TV things with them. And Andrew Gold, unfortunately, he died. In fact, we were going to meet. We'd arranged to meet in LA. Sorry, in Vegas. I had a trip out there.
Yeah,
and, he died. Heart attack. But again, lovely, lovely guy. And he told me how the music business worked. And we played. So it was in the Montreux Rock Festival with who was there. Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Depeche Mode, all huge artists. And everybody assumed I was now a multimillionaire because I've been on this show. £200 I got. So can you see it's very, very similar to the aviation business where
oh my God.
The idea is to make it look like everybody's successful, everybody's rich, something to aspire to. The reality, a lot different.
Whoa. Oh my God. That's well, no, I didn't know that you actually played drums for Wax because their song Right Between the Eyes.
I do.
That's very popular. Again, very popular in the Philippines, that song.
Why?
It's new wave.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were fantastic guys. They really were, and like Graham Goldman. Apparently, he was the first choice to be the bass player in Led Zeppelin. Yeah, and he'd written tracks for the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
For Your Love, he'd written that. So he'd written so many songs you've heard of before 10cc.
Yeah.
And again, just both of them, absolutely lovely guys. Musically, wasn't really my bag, but it was great fun. But they had, Right Between the Eyes and Building a Bridge to Your Heart.
Building a Bridge to Your Heart. Yes, that's another one that's really popular in the Philippines as well.
Yeah. So yes, if you YouTube Wax at Montreux,
and then you'll be able to drum. Well, Aidan also said that he saw Sully, the film, the one that you were talking about, and he said that he's downloaded the first 2 chapters of your book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
good man.
but he also wanted to ask you, what are the best aspects of the job as a pilot?
Flying.
As
pilot.
Aspects of the job.
Don't get me wrong, it had some fantastic aspects. So in the early days, we would fly to, for example, Goa, and we'd spend a week in Goa and then fly back. Flown all over the world, made loads and loads of friends, massively different experiences. So I remember one occasion, I flew to Vegas, had a few days in Vegas, came back, and then I went out to Singapore to fly Muslim ladies and gentlemen from Indonesia over to Saudi because there's the thing called a Hajj.
Yeah.
So you went from Sin City, and then next thing, like the holiest place. I mean, it was. But what was fantastic was just meeting these different people with different views on life. Well, it was fantastic, and that was the reason for doing it. And also, like most pilots, never grew up, so you want to play with like a big toy, which
yeah, sometimes, because like I said, Aidan is so into like airplanes and everything. He listens to like airline podcasts and stuff quite a lot, and sometimes you can hear all this sort of like buzzing noise coming. It's like almost like, is it a plane taking off, or all these sort of like conversation from a cockpit or something? It was like, what's going on?
Well, the interesting thing is, well, interesting. I was flying with a young guy some years ago, and he said, "Oh, you're the guy who's into music." Yeah, yeah. He said, "Oh, my dad flew with a guy who's also into music." I said, "Oh, okay, great." And, yeah, do you know him? It's called Bruce.
Bruce Dickinson.
I said, "Oh." He said, "Yeah, he's in a band called Iron Maiden." I said, "I don't think it'd be the same guy." He went, "Oh, it is." I said, "Nah, I doubt it." And then I thought, hold on, they've all got long hair, and he's just had his cut. And that was the trigger that I thought, oh, maybe there is something in this. Anyway, went home, had a quick Google, and it turned out that he was.
Yeah, Bruce Dickinson. Yeah.
Worked for a company called Astraeus. And then when Iron Maiden used to tour, they'd lease one of their aircraft, get it painted up in Iron Maiden. So you regularly see it flying around. So yeah, I've not met the guy, but my plane was bigger than his. Well, his band's often bigger than mine, but
there's another drummer who wanted to become a pilot, but he never did. Mark Brzezicki. He said that during his time, and I believe you've got you've got a story to tell.
Don't mention that name to me.
Because when I had Mark Brzezicki on as the drummer, I did ask him about that, job with the Cult, and he said that he just saw he just got the job. He didn't even know about it.
Yeah, exactly. My job.
But then I told him that you're a captain. You're an airline pilot. I said, well, he's better than me then, because I always wanted to become a pilot, and I never.
Well, yeah. What actually happened was, so I'd met Billy several times because the guys used to hang around the hacienda quite a lot as well, and we played with them a few times. And then Billy played, as I mentioned earlier, with La Volta. Yeah. So it was all very incestuous. And then I'd heard that La Volta had split up, and I'd heard that they'd just sacked their drummer. I think it was various issues. Let's leave it like that with him.
Yeah.
And so I thought, oh, I'll give him a ring. So I phoned Billy up and said, told him I was available. He said, oh, great, fantastic. Phone up the manager and sort out a rehearsal or see how it goes. So great, phone them up. Now the job's already gone. So, no, it hasn't. I've literally just spoken to the band and they've said contact. No, we've already got someone. And it turns out that Big Country shared the same management company.
Oh, it's cool.
So
yeah.
It made more sense for them to keep the guys who are already signed to them.
Yeah.
So that's why he became. But having said all that, in a way, well, not even in a way, I'm actually pleased because I wouldn't have done the flying. I wouldn't have experienced that. And I don't know whether looking at being Asprey's backside for years. and Asprey still owes me a tambourine. He nicked my tambourine when we played with him. So Asprey, if you're listening to me, want it back.
They're touring at the moment, aren't they? I think in America.
I'm hanging around outside everything with a banner. Where's my tambourine? You won't be able to shake me. See what I did?
Yeah. Well, I've got another question from. Is it true that air traffic controllers are paid a lot more?
Air traffic controllers?
Yeah.
Paid a lot more.
Are they paid a lot more?
Paid too much. No,
You paid too much.
I don't actually know. I think they paid a fair amount, and of course, I've just got to make sure my aircraft doesn't hit something. They've got lots of aircraft to make sure they don't hit each other. So I think they can only operate for 2 hours, and then they have to have a break.
Yeah.
Down some Valium, obviously, for then go back to work. Okay. But no, that does sound like a high stress job, because that's actually people say, oh, the responsibility of being a captain, but the reality is, yes, it is a lot of responsibility, but if you look after yourself, everybody behind you is going to be okay, and that's the best way of looking at it. You're not worried about everybody behind you. You're not worried. You just make sure that what you're doing is the right thing. And I'm pleased to say at no point, I mean, I've experienced engine failures and that type of thing, but at no point was I ever worried, because you've got so many options in the back pocket to actually make a decision. If something happened, you go this way, or if there's a mountain ahead of you, would you go that way or that way? And so you're always thinking ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was, and that was the part of the job I loved. Almost every day.
Can I just ask? Do you think there's like a similarity, like? But it's not like being, when you're a drummer, this coordination that you've got to have, like eye and hand and legs. Is there like a similar thing with being a pilot, that your coordination must be sort of like,
Yes. Yeah, there is. In fact, it's even more than that. With the similarities between flying. In fact, when I've mentioned this, I think I'll mention it in the book. The best training I ever had to be a pilot was working in the music business.
As a drummer?
No, just in general. So,
yeah.
Having to think. So, for example, I remember years ago, despite asking all the guys had they got the passports, because I was also managing the band as well. Have you got your passport? So we're driving down to London to catch the first ferry out in the morning to Dover to do the biggest concert we ever did. So the first thing I asked them when we meet up, has everybody got the passport? Yeah. So what happens as we get to London? One of them, oh, I've left my passport at home. So how now are we going to get a passport down to us in 3 hours? So we can't drive back. So it's that how can we do this? So it was working out things like that. So it was very, very useful to be a captain or be a pilot. Yeah. And then even the coordination, yes, there's a certain amount of coordination you need. But the biggest thing is the mindset. You just need to be, laid back, for want of a better word. Because if you start getting stressed, do you drive? Can you drive?
No. No. No, I'm way too nervous about these things.
Right. Well, when you first learn to drive, everything's happening at once, and so you're rubbish. Guarantee you, when you start to learn to drive, you will be rubbish, because everything's happening all at once. And the thought of having to go round a roundabout, doing the steering, changing gear, looking in your mirror, indicating, wow, how the hell can you do that? And then when you've done it for a few years, you're not only doing that, you're chatting to whoever you're with, you putting the radio, you just get used to it. But the moment you start stressing, your ability to do something reduces. And that was actually something I learned when I was drumming. If you're worried about something, you perform less. You're less able than if you're just chilled and relaxed and having a good time. And it's exactly the same with flying.
Well, at the moment, my husband is actually, well, Aiden is teaching our daughter how to drive. Well, he tried teaching me once, and I just couldn't. It's just something like, the clutch, and then you have to step on something, and then you have to look at everything. And I just said, no, I can't do this. And also, I think it's just the responsibility that no matter how careful you are, you have to sort of like think of the other, the other drivers that maybe they, because sometimes they're not careful.
No, no, they're not. But it's again, it is very, very similar. In fact, I had a conversation very early days when you're first learning. You think, well, can I do this? And we had a chap I was going through the training with. He said, "Do you think it'll ever be like driving?" I said, "Hopefully it will, but I don't know." But it is exactly like driving. Obviously, there's a bit more to it, but you get to a stage where you just, and in fact, the interesting thing is the guys who look like they know what they're doing are the guys who are actually tend to struggle. So it's like the cliche of the, oh yes, hello, Captain. You automatically think, oh, I'm not too sure about this guy. I'm not kidding, because the number of people who now we're doing the music again. In fact, it was the same with Mark Lanigan. No, we chatted, and I said, "Well, what were you doing before?" I told him, "Nah." Said, yeah, nah, because you see, you don't come across as your typical pilot, but so somebody's got to do the job. But it really is. You meet a lot of different people. I mean, I've met people who started off working in McDonald's who had this passion to do it. I've met people who've been in bands.
Yeah,
I've met people who've done astrophysics at university, XREF guys and girls. But the general overview is those that are just laid back. They've got what they call it spare capacity. So when something does go wrong, they're able to go, yeah, let's have a look at this, rather than stressing.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm always sort of like stressing. That's why I can't do it. That's why I even tried learning drums. But it's different though. I wasn't stressing. It's just that because I love seeing drummers all the time, I just let the drummer play.
Right.
I just felt like when he tried to teach me something, just say, "Oh, can you do that again?" And then I see him play the drums. It's like, "Oh, no, keep playing."
Well, I've the moment. Well, as I say, you'll find this out. In fact, hold on one second. This is my pride and joy. This.
Okay. Yay!
Right, that is a Stiff Little Fingers drumstick. Because in 1980, Stiff Little Fingers were one of my favourite bands at the time.
Yeah.
And my parents had said, "You can't have a set of drums, too noisy." But they'd gone on holiday. So my friend, who had started BFG off with, he said, "Stiff Little Fingers are playing at the university, Liverpool." And I'll go to that. And during the concert, the drummer threw a drumstick out and came near me. I caught it, but it bounced out of my hand. And somebody else grabbed hold of it. So I said to my friend, "If I catch a drumstick tonight, I'm going to buy a set of drums on Saturday." And that's the drumstick.
Yeah, you did. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you get it signed?
Well, no, because we were in the middle of the crowd. It was, However, in a couple of Sundays, I think it's 2 weeks, Stiff Little Fingers are playing with the Membranes in Blackpool. So I'm going to give him his drumstick back. So yeah, that's yeah, so yeah, I've chatted. Well, mentioned it to Jake Burns. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're hopefully going to meet up on week on Sunday.
I just
Yeah.
saw you twirl that. You don't normally twirl when you're playing, though, do you?
No, because I drop them when I do. No, it's a bit too show busy.
No, you look very serious when you're playing the drums.
Always serious.
So at the moment, you're doing both BFG and the membranes. So
Well, at the moment, yes, but we're all, I'm also working producing a brand new band, which is an interesting one because nobody knows who's in it. I obviously know the people involved, but and they're as heavy as hell. Stockholm Soldiers, they're called. It's heavy. Think of Rammstein, but with a female singer.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
really, really good. So yeah,
Yeah.
working with them at the moment, and we're actually just building a studio with. So we're a few months from finishing, but that's going to be my my life working in the studio and touring with hopefully a few more concerts with the Membranes,
Yeah.
BFG, and
Like,
just
your son plays in BFG as well.
Ghost is the bass player. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's just great getting back into it. And all the guys I used to know and new guys. No, it's just I never ever thought I'd be doing it again, but circumstances have allowed me to do it, and I'm probably loving it more now than I did when I was doing it full time in the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you still fly or not now?
No, although I'm get licensed to train pilots in the simulator. I haven't really touched that because at the end of the day, I'm looking. What would I rather do? I'd rather do music.
Music, yeah, yeah.
Well, I still do work in the. I've got a. In fact, it was due to the job, the book. I was approached about doing some safety work for an airline. I won't mention the airline's name, but they are solid. You know, they're doing it the right way. So it's a pleasure working with them. And they obviously know what they're getting. They know somebody's not going to allow anything to go that isn't right. So,
Yeah,
so yeah, and I'm probably busier now than I've ever been.
Well, you mentioned your guitar heroes, but do you have any drumming heroes?
Yeah, obviously,
Rennie? Rennie for damaging your.
well, because he's damaged my kit. So, oh, he's very, very good, but totally different to the way I play. Like he keeps time. Well, it's the old cliche. In fact, yeah, that's a good one. When I was learning, one of the drummers I studied a lot was Clem Burke.
Yeah.
Because he does a certain thing with the hi-hat. Do you know what the hi-hat is, yeah?
Yeah.
So he does that certain thing with the hi-hat. And so I used to listen to him when I was drumming away with knitting needles or chairs. And then when we did the Montreux Rock Festival thing, the way the stages were set up, you'd have one stage here, one stage there. And as this band were being filmed, they were putting all the equipment on this stage. And when this band had finished, they'd turn the cameras.
Yeah.
And then this. Anyway, Eurythmics were on the next stage as Wax were setting up. And the drums were already there. So I sat behind the drums. And they were playing a track called Thorn in My Side. And I looked over and it was Clem Burke drumming for Eurythmics. So I just started drumming along with them.
Yeah.
Clem Burke looked over, started smiling, and doing his twirls and showing off. And I'm trying to show off, but I'm failing miserably. So that was a good moment, you know, playing along with one of your drumming heroes. But yeah, obviously John Bonham, because he was unhinged the way he played. He was just on a different level. So yeah, who else really? Well, it's almost each drummer has or some drummers have a certain signature thing that they do that I pick up on, or you know, you can pick up on. So as I say, there was Clem Burke had his hi-hat, the way he did the hi-hat. John Bonham had this thing called triplets. In fact, they're known as the Bonham triplets now, before I get too technical. And who else was there?
But you never went for drumming lessons, though, did you? Did you go for it now? So no. You just watch all these drummers and then you... Yeah.
It's like Phil Collins. If you listen to the way Phil Collins drums, he will do a roll, but then he won't put the cymbal where it should be. He puts in an extra beat. So even if, you know, tonight, if you listen to that, he doesn't put the cymbal where every other drummer would put it. He puts another tom beat in and then puts the cymbal in, and it's very effective. And the female drummer from Lenny Kravitz, you know, Are You Going to Go My Way? And you hear it go, I'll utilize that little bit. And what you do, you listen, you try and do what they're doing, and then try and put your own spin on it. And that's what I love about it. You know, you're never ever as good as you want to be. So,
well, you talk about like Phil Collins. Do you think? Well, me personally, I think that In the Air Tonight, that bit in the middle where we played it, I think that's just incredible. Do you like do that sometimes? Do you practice it and do that?
No, but there's the big thing about Phil Collins. Yes, he's obviously a very good drummer, but it was the sound that they got, and of course, because it's Ask the Drummer, and we should be talking about drumming things. The sound that he got kind of almost defined the 80s, and it's technically what he's. I'm not too sure. In fact, John Robbie was talking about this quite recently, and he reckoned it was the guy who produced Public Image, Flowers of Romance, that came up with this technique that Phil Collins then subsequently used, and it's called gating. So if you listen to the Phil Collins drums on, well, Air Tonight, for example, you hear the snare, it sounds like an explosion. But what they've done is they put lots of reverb on the effect. So you hit it, it goes, but reverb will carry on. But then they'll put what's called a gate. So you get a lot of reverb and it just shuts off. So you get this blast of snare, which is very, very effective. Unfortunately, it's become very synonymous now with the 80s. So if you did it now, it's like an 80s kind of sound.
Yeah. Well, I mean, people have sort of like said about, you know, the name of the podcast, which is Ask the Drummer. I should really say it's Ask the Drummer's Life, because it's about
with the bracket and X job
and X job. Because it's really more about your life than about the drumming bit. But another one I really wanted to ask is, have you ever had sort of like a drumming, what I call a drumming disaster? Like, have you ever...
Every concert. Have I had a drumming? Well, actually, when we played our BFG's biggest concert, we were on with Bjork and the Pogues. It's a big festival out in Germany. About 15,000 people there. We set the kit up after Remy'd used it, and I went to hit the snare, and the snare, you know, literally the snares underneath.
Yeah.
They'd all broken, and so there was very first hit, and it was donk instead of crack, and anyway, I'm now looking around, help, and there was a band called 12 Drummers Drumming. Who, yeah, and one of the guys was stood at the corner. So, you know, a few minutes later, a new snare came. So that was really kind of them. But no, what you tend to do is, if something happens, you kind of work around it. So if you drop a stick, you know, you just use one hand until you get it. In fact, that was a good one. What drumming disaster? It wasn't exactly a drumming disaster, but I could have got locked up. There used to be I maybe over exaggerate, but we played with Wax. We played a thing called Cheggers Plays Pop. Do you remember that? It was a 80s kids program.
Keith Chagrin.
That's it.
Keith Chagrin. Yeah.
Well, he had a show in the 80s, and we were on, and they filmed it. Must be 7 or 8 times, different angles, and on one of the shoots, I dropped my stick. Now, bearing in mind this was a kids program, and there was maybe 20 school kids in front, all swaying along, and when I dropped my stick, I muttered out loud, automatically. I went, swearing my head off. Realised, I shouldn't have said that. And looked over, and Andrew Gold is laughing his head off. So, and I'm thinking, well, they won't use that bit. What actually they did, they cut out where I swore. But I'm drumming. You see me drop it. It cuts to Andrew, laughing his head off, back to me laughing, and the whole thing just kind of like collapses. So there we go.
I wonder if that's on YouTube.
I don't know. I hope.
Well, my final question to you is: do you have any advice to aspiring drummers?
Learn the bass. Seriously.
Yes.
Well, there's obviously, you've got different ways of going about it. You can either, in fact, I'll use my wife's example. My wife learned to play the piano, and quite late in life, and she absolutely loved it. And we had 1 or 2 parents thought, could she teach the children? And she made the decision that although she doesn't want to teach them grades, she wants to teach them the passion of playing the piano, and doing it for the love of what it is, rather than an exam. There's enough exams. So that's why I absolutely hate things like X Factor and whatever there is, or even Battle of the Bands things. I just hate them because it's not a competition to see who's the best band. Let the fans decide that.
No, well, you were saying before about advice to aspiring drummers. So if you want to just continue.
Okay. Yeah, let's just listen to as many drummers as you can, When your mum and dad go out, pick up the knitting needles, turn the chairs upside down, and
it's gone. Yep.
no, I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
Yeah. Stockport suffering with a bad connection. It's not.
I think so. Well, I just want to say hello to Alvin John Santiago. He sort of like joined us. Alvin is in Manila, so
Hello, Alvin.
Yeah, and Alan Braun Ramirez. Yeah, he's also saying thanks, Captain Mike, for that really, really interesting insight into the airline industry, the aviation industry.
But not so much the drumming, I understand.
And the drumming, of course. And do you want? So, where can people get copies of your book?
They can either get it from Amazon. So
and you've got a dedicated. There's a dedicated sort of like website for it, isn't there?
Yeah, if you go to pullingwingsfrombutterflies.com, and then you can order signed copies for those of you who are into that.
Yeah, well, not in the UK because I mean, if it's me, I'll just.
Well, that's it. It's in the UK, but if you're abroad, then Amazon is the way to go.
Yeah, and also the next gigs for BFG and the Membranes.
Next Membranes gigs, that's next month at Rebellion.
Yeah.
And then we're off touring with the Stranglers in September, October, throughout Europe. So that'll be good. And BFG's, in fact, we're playing in Leipzig, but that's next June, I think it is. But there's a few other gigs knocking around. But it literally is filling up really, there's lots and lots of gigs coming from the Membranes, as I say, and this the other artists I'm working with. So busy. And hopefully you're going to be at the Chameleons tour. I think we're playing with them again.
Is that the Ritz in December?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah,
so. But I think we're playing at the Cavern again because there was, I think the drummer and a couple of the other guys caught COVID at the end of the Chameleons tour last time. That's why we didn't play at the Cavern again, because we were due to play there again. But I think it's been rearranged for, I think is it December this year, I think. So I'll probably see you there.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. God, I forgot. I was sort of like, you talked about touring with the Stranglers, because I've got a story with the Stranglers, because it's like, I was sort of like telling people that it was the only time I went to a gig that I actually feared for my life.
Really?
Because you know me, I like being at the front all the time, being short, and I was just really wanted to make sure that I could see the band, and but that time when I went to see them in Manchester, the fans, I mean the Stranglers fans, they're really so. I think it's a bit difficult for sort of like a single female sort of like gig goer to be in a place like that. So I thought, well, after the first set, it was the Alarm who did the support. I just thought, I have to get out. I have to sort of like, because as I knew then that as soon as the Stranglers comes on stage, it's gonna get even worse.
Was that the tour where they had Craig Adams playing the bass for?
It was in 2016.
Yeah, and I saw them on the same tour in Edinburgh. Sorry, not Edinburgh, Birmingham.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, they were. It was. I hate to say it, and I'm ashamed to say it, but it was the first time I'd ever seen the Stranglers live, and they were fantastic.
They're amazing. And that was the first time I've seen them live as well. But I think the next time I go and see them, I'm gonna make sure that I'm sitting at the back, so like way at the back. Well, I won't be sort of like crushed to death.
Well, I think the first gig on the nearest one for you would be Dublin. So if you're going to Dublin, we'll see you there.
I need to sort of renew my passport because I still haven't renewed my passport yet. So but hopefully, hopefully I will do soon.
Excellent.
But if I don't see you at the Stranglers gig, I'll definitely see you at the Chameleons.
All right. Well, take care of yourself.
Yeah, you too. And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Captain.
It was probably the most giggly interviewer I've ever come across. But
I'm sorry. I know I always thought like, well, I'm not really a professional interviewer. I'm just a fan. I just really love drummers, and I just find them really fascinating.
As a species, yes.
But yeah, but anyways, thank you so much. So,
okay. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. And see you again soon.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay.
Cheers.
Enjoy the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Right. Well, this is actually the proper ending to the podcast. So thank you all so much for joining us live, and thank you once again to Captain Mike Simkins. He's absolutely amazing. He really is. You can get a copy of his book, Pulling Wings from Butterflies, from Amazon or the website. But I'm gonna put the link to it on the Ask the Drummer page anyway. So if you're interested. But anyways, yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend once again. And as always, love music, love live, and love drummers. And hope to see you all again next Sunday. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Bye. Bye.